So, welcome back to another episode of Living the Sky Life in my sibling series. I have the opportunity to speak with Maddie. Her mom, Shannon, was actually on my marriage episode in that series that was prior to this one. And we had so many things to talk about with our kids. And Maddie, you and your brother are 2 years apart, just like my kids. So, I was really anxious when you agreed to be on because I love hearing the perspective of an adult sibling. As we kind of talked before we started recording, you at 15 or even 13, your opinions and your feelings and all of the things about autism and your family and your brother have probably significantly changed in the last 10 years. So, first of all, welcome to the podcast. And I'm excited to get into all of this with you.
No, of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into autism and the conversation goes that direction, tell us a little bit about you. You're 25, you have a career, you are all in your life. So tell us about that.
Yep, I work as the assistant director of athletics for external operations and sports communications at Young Harris College. That is the college that I attended and graduated from in 2021. So this is the start of my third year, full blown going into adulting. I have my own apartment with my boyfriend and a dog that we love. And luckily, I'm about 30 minutes away from my mom, who she had mentioned. So it's really nice being here and being close to them. I originally grew up in Orlando, Florida. So I have realized in the last 7 years that I love the mountains and not the traffic. The Florida, I miss the beach incredibly, but I really enjoy where I'm at right now and getting my foot in the door in college athletics. And that's the career that I'm working to grow in and kind of follow that path in college athletics. So outside of work, if anyone is listening that works or knows anything about college athletics, I don't have much free time. So there's a couple things I like to do. I like to walk my dog, spend time with my boyfriend and my family. And sometimes I play golf when I can. But like I said, athletics just kind of keeps me busy most of the weekends. And it's one of those jobs where the reward is just being able to have those days where it's maybe 2 o'clock on a Thursday and I'm sitting at a baseball game statting instead of being at an office. So that is the trade. Summers are very kind of lackadaisical as we are out of season in college athletics. And then I don't know any other career field that you can get a 2 week vacation in the holidays. So that's a big blessing of my job as well. I grew up in Florida. I've played softball my whole life. So I've been kind of thrown into sports. I started when I was about 4 years old and played my whole life through high school and into college, and then just recently graduated. So that has been the hardest thing in my adult life, was kind of figuring out my identity and who I am outside of sports. And I think we may get into this later, but I think Jordan and I's relationship has thrived since I've been done with college, because I haven't been busy with competing and really being dialed in. It's more time I get to see my family and spend time with him. And so just in these last 3 years, I think our relationship has grown tremendously more than it has in the, all the years we spent together as kids. So that's been really, really exciting.
Oh, I love hearing that. Gives me hope for my kids. Later, Kendall's only a freshman in college. She's just getting started.
Yeah,
Um, well,
it will get better.
I hope so. Well, you guys are 2 years apart. So Jordan's the older sibling. He's 27 and you're 25, as we said. So obviously it's been a long time since you were little kids, but were you guys able to always kind of connect and play together and engage with each other, or were there periods of time, certain ages where maybe when you were little you could do that, and then when you were in your teen years you really couldn't, you didn't have anything in common, or you were just too busy? How did that kind of transpire your relationship up to now?
I will be honest, I was a little bit of the instigator as a child. So it was hard for him and I to connect, just because I was always involved in sports, and Jordan didn't play sports, or we didn't play with a ball or really do things like that together when we were younger. So my version of giving love to him, looking back, I would say was kind of messing with him. I remember there would just be times when, whether I was not teasing him, kind of like scaring him around the corner or just doing things to be an instigator. That was my way of being able to have a relationship with him because
Hmm.
we really didn't have those brother sister conversations that kids that are growing up without autism probably experience at some of those younger ages. So we didn't do much together as kids. It was always where he was my brother and I looked after him, and the stigma of having a brother with autism wasn't there for me because we had just such a great support group of friends and family that it's not like I ever had to really explain autism. It was, I think my mom did a lot of that for me. And so I didn't really talk about it with my friends. It was just, hey, this is my brother Jordan. He may smile at you, he may flick you off, but we don't care. We're just going to hang out. And Jordan was always there. So all of my friends that I can remember going back, they knew him, but we just weren't able to connect on a personal level until my college years, really.
So did your mom have to, I know she had a period of time where she was a single mom because that was what our episode was about when we were talking. Did she have to attend some of your softball stuff? Did she have to kind of pass on a few events for you because she had to be with Jordan, or was he able to go to all of your games and all of your activities?
So I will say when I was very young and I played travel ball, my mom would bring me, and Jordan was always, we set him up and he had a chair with one of those like umbrella things that come over because the Florida heat was crazy for
Yeah.
5 games all day. And so he would come a lot and just play his games or read a book while we were playing, and he would travel with us. And so he was able to come a lot during my high school years. I would either take myself or my dad. He sometimes would do a lot of that stuff where he would take me if my mom was there with Jordan. So he came a lot during the younger years, but as he grew older and I was able to sometimes drive myself,
Hmm.
it wasn't one of those things like he wasn't there for me. He was there because we needed him to have supervision and either be with
Right.
my mom or with me during the games. And so I know he is aware that I played softball, and I'm sure he remembers going to all the games, but he wasn't like the cheerleader brother on the fence. He was kind of just playing his games or doing his book. But he would come, yes.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, did you mind him being there? Did it embarrass you, or were you happy that he was there because that meant your mom could be there too if he was there?
Right. I was very happy that he did get to be a part of my life at softball at such a young age because I think it allowed me, I was never embarrassed. I think
That's
that's one
awesome.
of the things I learned just as a kid is that even today I laugh because I am sometimes the least judgmental person, even in situations where maybe I should be a little judgmental or hesitant to, build a relationship with someone. I have never been that way because of Jordan. I've always been very empathetic and non-judgmental and forgiving just because of having a brother with autism. I think it taught me those qualities at such a young age that it's funny because I can now see those characteristics transition into my adult years and adult relationships. And so it was never an embarrassment. And I think it allowed my friends and our family friends to for it to be normalized where Jordan is just Jordan and he comes with us and this is who he is. And we were just never ashamed or felt like we had to keep him away from that life. It was more so just kind of having those tough conversations with friends or families when things would happen and it's like maybe it made one uncomfortable and you'd have to just have that conversation where because of his autism, this is how he reacts. It's not anything personal. It's just you are a person. One thing I can think of, and I hope this is okay to share, but one thing, I had a friend come over to our house one time from my freshman year. I went to college at the University of Southern Mississippi. And so I was away. I didn't have a vehicle my freshman year, but my roommate, she played soccer there and she lived in Gainesville, Florida. And so when we came home for the winter break, we had stopped at my house in Georgia for her to drop me off. And Jordan had never met her before. So this was a new friend of mine. And when he gets really nervous, he doesn't do this anymore. It's just seeing him mature as well. It's funny because he doesn't do this anymore. But, 5, 6 years ago, my friend came over. She had walked in and I had told her who Jordan is and that he has autism and just I don't know how he's going to react, but it could be anything. So just be prepared. It's going to be a surprise for both of us. And she walked in and he was just flicking her off.
Ah,
And so that used to be, I'm sure my mom mentioned like him flicking the bird was like the biggest thing as him for a kid, that he would just do that when he would get stressed or feel anxious. Like he didn't have any words to communicate how he was feeling. And so we later had to tell him like, Jordan, you can't do that stuff, and told him repeatedly over the years. But I remember just Alicia being like, it's totally fine. She's like, it's okay. I don't care if that's him. He'll get to like me. And she had actually stayed up here for about 3 days. And toward the third day, he was actually like saying hello and
aw,
at least addressing that she was there. But I think it's just one of those things that I'm sure certain parents with autism experience in their children, is just that when they have either someone come into their routine that's not normally a part of their routine or have
mhm,
to be put in certain situations, it's just like a social anxiety almost that they can't communicate. So it may be just a hand motion or maybe just actions that they do because they can't necessarily communicate that. So
yeah.
it's been a just a long road, but I'm sure like my mom said, it's just been really, really good for us over the last few years, especially with me being an adult and not just instigating him and doing things to like pick on him or annoy him. Like when I was young, I would be that annoying little sister that wanted to annoy her brother. And I think like that caused him maybe when he was younger to have some like resentment for me. But now in this older, adult relationship that we have, even when my parents go out of town and my boyfriend and I are staying at the house, or most recently, I took just Jordan to Florida.
I heard
Um,
about that.
so we had to go through the Atlanta airport and we did all that by ourselves. And it's like we have this brother sister connection where I could feel in him that it was like, this is cool. Like my sister's taking me on an airplane and like we're driving together, and we talked a little bit on the ride there. And so we're starting to open up those just normal conversations that brothers and sisters have, like now at 25 and 27. So it's very interesting.
Gosh, I mean, just I know probably a lot of parents listening are like, "Oh my gosh, if my kids could travel together like alone without me, I can't even fathom what that would be like with Kendall and
Mhm.
Skylar. Maybe it'll happen. I don't know when they get older, but
Mhm.
so were you nervous about that at all? Because I know it was his first flight, right?
It was his first one. We had
Ugh.
been on a flight. We were like 3 years old. So, and what's funny, I'm sure maybe some parents can relate if their child has Jordan's memory is just insane. And we were walking through the Atlanta airport, and the trailers that you get on from the gate to actually get onto the airplane, he was pointing at them and he's like, "Oh, are those the same ones like we rode on in Indiana before?" And I'm like, I can barely remember stuff from elementary school like prior, let alone him remembering the airport from when he was 3 years old. So that
Wow.
was really cool. I wasn't nervous. I mean, it was just with Jordan specifically, he's just slow. He's a very slow walker. So my only fear was, okay, we have to be there like 3 hours ahead of time. If it normally takes me like an hour and a half to 2 hours to get situated, like I really just have to be on time with him, which was actually an hour and a half early, just to make sure that he can get through the airport easily. And it was actually as more smoothly than I even prayed about, because I thought about like, okay, what all could kind of go wrong, and I'm like really just missing our flight. That's the only thing that could go wrong. but nothing did. Luckily, we flew Delta. So if you've ever been through the Atlanta airport, we didn't
Yes.
have to go on the train that takes you to your gate or walk down that way. And it was funny because that was one of the things he was looking forward to, riding that train.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't check our bags or do anything. So whenever we got there, we were able to just go straight to that Delta gate and then not have to ride it. But I did take him on the way back. We ended up having to check our bags on the way back. So luckily he did get to go on the train, and we'll remember that for his whole life. But I
Oh,
wasn't nervous. He did great. I was glad
man.
that I could do it for my mom too.
Yeah.
Just so
What a
she
cool
could, because
bonding between the two of you guys too. I mean, just like you said, he'll remember that forever, and I'm sure you will too. What a cool experience.
yes.
So has Jordan always been moderately verbal, or like is that something that's grown as he's aged, his ability to communicate more clearly, like what he's wanting or what he's needing or thinking, or is that something that was never really an issue for him?
So that has grown, his communication has grown tremendously
Okay.
in these last 3 to 5 years. I would say he's always been verbal, but he stutters. So he's has been attending, not anymore, but when he was really young, he would go to speech therapy
Hmm.
and do a lot of that. But what my mom has discovered actually within the last year probably is that he communicates the most clearly and gets his point across whenever he is not pressured to speak. So
Okay.
sometimes when we have like big gatherings or people come over, we kind of tell them like, don't expect to get a full conversation, which sometimes you just have to let people know that aren't around him or aren't around people with autism, if they are moderate to more nonverbal, because it can be taken off as rude if people, like someone's there and you don't say hi, but he'll
Hmm.
always say hey. It's just that conversation piece. If you try to ask him questions or try to engage too much, it's like he'll pause and the wheels are turning and he just can't get the words out, as the wheels are turning so fast in his head that he can't communicate it clearly. He stutters very badly, that it's like my mom and I understand him the most. But when he wants to speak to you, which in the last year to 3 years, he has really opened up to the point where he will engage in a conversation with someone else. Like he'll start the conversation, which up until probably a year to 3 years ago, he never talked unless you talked to him first. So him being in charge of what he wants to say and what he wants to talk about, that's when he stutters the least. And he can make a whole statement and you kind of understand what he's trying to get across when he is not pressured, but he feels like he is the one that's really driving the conversation.
God, what a breakthrough. That's so awesome. I mean, I've heard that from
It's
so many parents
huge.
that have older 20s to 30s, and beyond. They've said there is something about the 20s, the mid 20s especially, that there's just a switch that's flipped, or a maturity, or I don't know what it is, but they said, just obviously we're never stagnant. Our kids are always learning and growing and developing at their own time. But if something about those adult years that they just kind of very quickly change, their behaviors kind of stop, some of the behaviors that they always did. Again, I don't know if they
Yep.
mature out of it or if they just kind of get tired of doing it or have more control over their body at that point. I don't know.
Well, and I
It's
think it is a maturity thing, and I'm still learning and trying to learn as much as I can from my mom too. But even with him, like flicking the bird, like he used to do that all the time as just a reaction,
hmm.
and he has not done that like in the past 3 to 5 years, like just not at all. So it is really just like a switch that flips, and I think it's almost like for them, they understand growing up or becoming an adult differently. But now that we are getting older and having some of those conversations, like life conversations about being adults together and being openly communicative about it, I think he understands. It's just hard to understand to the extent that he understands, like he
Hmm.
understands life. It's just to what context is he taking everything in compared to me?
Hmm.
That's where it's hardest for me, because especially with him emotionally, sometimes I just think like, you know, does he take it the same way, or did he take all of that in the same way as me, or is it slightly different, or does he, feel these things as much as I feel them? That's the one thing that will be interesting to see, like in the next 3 to 5 years, like if him emotionally he can connect more and
Hmm.
talk about it more with me.
Now,
But
I don't know, I don't presume to think that you and your mom have discussed like the future with him. I get asked this question all the time about, because my kids are older than a lot of parents who reach out to me, if I've had the discussion about the future with Kendall, and if she's, the executor of his trust after me, things like that. And I don't know that there's a perfect time or age to ever talk about those things. I think my goal has always been to take care of the future for him without her. Aside from her visiting him and him being somewhere close to where she is, if he's living in a facility or something, or in a host home or whatever it is, that she's close enough nearby, and also my niece, just making sure that family and people are constantly checking in on him and making sure everything is well. I just don't want her to feel like it's her job to take over where I leave off, and have him live with her, and her and her partner, whoever, in the future. And since you have a boyfriend, and I'm sure you guys have, well, like you said, you've spent time at your house, kind of watching him, or just kind of being there for him when you need to be. So is that a conversation that you guys have had? And if you have, is that something that you feel necessary to bring up to someone that you date? When you talk about your brother, I don't know how that works really.
so I will say my mom has just recently had this conversation with me, probably in the last 6 months.
Hmm.
She did explore going to a facility and did look at that. And I will just say, as a back note, we live in Georgia, and
Hmm.
the accommodations that the state of Georgia provides for kids with special needs and adults for special needs is not like many other states. And so that was
Not
the
many states
biggest.
have good accommodations, sadly. So
Yeah,
you're not
and that
alone.
was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing that I didn't even know until she really explained it to me when we made the move to Georgia, that like Jordan, he is in a day program, so he goes to a facility and he is there with a ton of other adults with special needs, and it's not just autism. The special needs do range, but from Monday through Friday, he is able to go from 8 to 3, and they teach him kind of life skills, and
Hmm.
he's able to go out into the community and go do things. And so he can't get that in any other state. So when she had this conversation with me and went to the facility, she sat me down and she was like, it's really hard for me. Like, it's hard for me as much as, you know, I want to let go and maybe let him try to be somewhere. She's like, and it's a hard thing that she will have to figure out what's best for her as a mom to do. But I pretty much told her, she said, I just feel like he can't get care as good as I can give him
Of course.
anywhere.
Hmm.
So it's one of those where I told her, well, hey, then he's staying here, like, and he will stay here with you and through forever. And then one day, it's always hard to talk about that, but one day when they are no longer there, then I will make sure that he's in that house and he has someone that's there taking care of him. And that's what it will be, because if I don't want it to seem like if she didn't want him to be somewhere, then it's not like when things end, I'm just going to put him somewhere. I think it's
Right.
really, she knows him best. And if she wants him to be in the house, and I told her, then I can never leave the state of Georgia. And that is a conversation I have with Dalton, that he's a part of me, he's a part of our family. And so whatever that looks like, I mean, I can assume as much as, I can, but we really won't know until that part of our life kind of unfolds. But I think it's just a matter of having the conversation, because until you have it, I don't think you'll know how the other child will react.
Right.
And I think I was very comforting for my mom, because it was never a burden. I mean, I just always assumed, like, until before she had this conversation that he's gonna obviously end up being with me one day, and I didn't know what that looked like, but I think I comforted her in knowing that, hey, whatever you want, that's what I'm gonna do, and I'll take care of him. Like, it's not, he's a part of us, so that's my responsibility as his sister. And just like if two normal people, something went wrong, typically you lean on family to do those things, or to be able to provide or take care of your family. And if you need, people that you have to stay with, you would do it. So it's never different in my situation, at least. I told her, hey, whatever you want, that's what I'm gonna do. And he's with me forever. So we'll be here together for the long run. And that's,
Aw,
I think, what family is. So
such a beautiful
we always have
perspective.
each other.
I mean, you don't have to
Mhm.
take that stance. I mean, there are probably plenty of people, and it's okay, that are like,
Yeah.
I can't do this. I've seen what you've done, mom, your entire, life with raising my brother, and I can't. I don't think that I can do it, and I'm just, I will do whatever you need me to do on the financial side, like oversee the finances and make sure that, the money is being spent properly and all of that, but I don't want to do day-to-day living care, and that's okay. So I'm always
Right.
curious just what, and I'm sure that changes with age too. If I ask my daughter that question right now at 18, she's probably like, heck no, he is not living with
Right.
me. But
Give her
maybe
give her
when
till
she's
she's done.
25 or 30, she'll be like, of course. I mean, I used to
Right.
say that. I was just joking with you, mom. Of course he would live
Right.
with me. So I just wondered kind of what you thought about that. Um,
Yeah.
so, we've talked about a couple things about Jordan that are pretty funny and uniquely him, but what are the things that you just appreciate and love so much about him? I mean, personally, I love all of the people that I know on the spectrum, and every day seems to be their best day. Like, they just don't have hate in their heart, and they don't, like, you know what I mean? They just don't have a negative bone in their body. They love everything and everyone. So what do you love and appreciate about Jordan?
The one thing I will say that I've noticed the most in my adult years is I've always loved this about him, but more so now, is that he is so uniquely, unapologetically him. He is aware that he has autism, and we have those conversations where, things for you are different because you have autism. And so he knows he is different, but in a way that I don't think he feels ashamed. I honestly don't think he thinks about it at all. He Most recently, my mom has gotten him to start smiling in pictures when we take pictures, because Jordan was always non-social, a lot of social anxiety around things. And so he didn't never like to take pictures. And probably within the past year to 2 years, my mom has really like started taking pictures of him and like showing him like, hey dude, look, like you're handsome. Like, look at when you smile versus when you don't. Look at the difference. And since she kind of showed him those pictures of himself, I think it was something that just kind of snapped in his brain. And now it's like, even when we went to Florida, like we take pictures all the time, and he smiles. And when he wears,
Aw.
my mom always gets him these funny shirts that have like just random sayings on them that make him laugh. And when he puts on his shirt and he smiles in a picture, like seeing him kind of be just happy with himself and his life, like he is just him, and he knows his situation. But I mean, I'm like, he lives the best life you could possibly
I
live
know,
if
I was
you
gonna
really
say
think
that.
about it. I mean, he lives in a great house, like doesn't really have to work, he doesn't
No
have the normal
chores.
stress that you have, yeah, like that we have as adults. And so
Mhm.
he is just in his living his best life. And I think that's something that like my mom and Dave and Dalton, my boyfriend, and like some of our close friends and family just understand that, hey, he is who he is, and he's gonna be, who he is forever, and you just have to love him for it. That there's just times when maybe it's going to be a little rough, but we'll get past it and just learn from it too. Like that's what's really cool about having Jordan as a sibling, is that I'm just always learning, because especially when I go out, and I'm traveling, or other places, I see other families with either a child or an adult with autism, and just having that empathy for other families too, and just not making them feel like I'm judging, or if I can be kind in any way to another family, I understand that, because I understand what it feels like when we have people that are kind to us, and understanding that we have, a family member with autism. So,
I say it all the time, but I mean, you're living proof of it. I feel like as hard as it is sometimes, probably a lot of the times, to be a sibling with autism in your family, and you have to make sacrifices a lot, divide and conquer parents. And for all of the things that you guys go through, you really are such special people in the world. I'm so glad that there are so many autism siblings, for as maybe as crazy as that sounds to say, because you guys are empathetic and you are just so thoughtful of other people and kind. And it's hard anymore to find people that are genuinely putting themselves in someone else's shoes and seeing situations like a family in Target with the child that's having a meltdown, or a young adult that's having a meltdown. And instead of judging, or, like, assuming the parents are bad parents, you guys can at least offer some insight to the people around you. So the more you're educating your friends and your boyfriend and just people that don't live this life and haven't lived this life, we just need so much more of that, because it really provides an education for the
right.
world, with you guys, living in it. So it's hard, but I think you take away so much more from your childhood than, you're mature beyond your years, for sure.
Right.
So I don't know if it feels that way, but just
Well, no, it does, Lori, because I was gonna say too, I actually just this last weekend I was in a wedding for one of my good friends from college, and the two girls that did our hair and makeup, I was just sitting there getting to know them, and somehow the me having a brother with autism came up, and they had started asking me a couple of questions. And I think the hardest thing, and my mom sees this a lot with Not Your Average Autism Mom, but she is dealing with parents where it's like they have a 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 year old, and
mhm,
some of the signs may be there, but it's like that's the hardest thing for parents to overcome, is to go get the second opinion or the third opinion, or take them to an autism specialist, and being able to get over that step. And this weekend when I was there, I was able to have the conversation with these two girls that have a close friend that has two young kids, and she thinks that one of them may be on the spectrum in some way. And I was able to give them just advice that I had learned through my mom over the years, and especially learned with Jordan even as a kid. And even, and I don't know, maybe they didn't take that to their friend, but I'm hoping that they did. And even just take, like, I gave them my mom's business card, just if you need a community too, because it's really just having a community of people that aren't ashamed to talk about it. But
mhm,
unless you know someone or have someone in your family, you're not going to educate yourself on something if there's no need to. So
right,
I think that's where we have to be more patient with people that don't have someone with autism that they know, because it is like an educational aspect of life where they have to be educated and learn. And like with Jordan, we're constantly learning. So all these hills that we've climbed over the years, and where we've gotten just in the past 3 years, like I'm looking forward to what it will be 10 years from now, and being able to just share that. Like anytime I have the opportunity now to share about Jordan and be a voice or reason or help for anyone, I try to take the opportunity to do so, just because I want it to be more normalized and talked about, and
mhm,
not like hush hush, like something's wrong with them. It's like, no, this is common, and it's a lot more common now than it was even 20 years ago. So
mhm,
it's just a matter of educating all people, and not getting mad when maybe some people don't understand, or it takes some people a little bit longer of periods of time to be able to learn. Because like you said, I mean, it's not easy. It's not as you are raising a normal child or dealing with a normal brother to his sister. It will get hard at times, but now looking back, I'm like, wow, all those hard times, like it all makes sense now. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, and I was the one instigating half the things. Like he probably should have disliked me when we were kids because I was just being an idiot. But
He probably
that's where
loved the
I've learned.
engagement, though. I mean, I'm sure
Well,
that's how he
he
felt engaged with you. So he
right.
probably
And
enjoyed it.
that's what I think it was too. And back then I didn't know how to engage in any other way. Where now as an adult, like I am engaging better than I did as a child. So it's
Mhm.
been an amazing journey.
Well, I like to ask this question uh, to all of the guests too, because as a mom myself and as a parent, we just always hope that we're doing right by all of our kids, our neurotypical kids, if we have them, and our child on the spectrum. And I know I speak for a lot of people listening that we worry so much that the amount of attention and time that is required from our child on the spectrum, that we just worry that our neurotypical children, like my daughter and like you, feel neglected at times, or not purpose, that we're not purposely doing that, but you know I'm sure there are times throughout your life that you were like, man, I just wish that we could just go as a family to this restaurant, or go just do something, and we didn't have autism always kind of at the forefront of everything. So I kind of wondered if you ever had those feelings, and also if you could say anything at all about your mom and her parenting, and how she managed that aspect of raising you both and being there for both of you. Because I know she's an incredible person, but I'm sure she'd love to hear your perspective on her parenting throughout all this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when I was younger, because I was so accumulated with playing sports
Hmm.
and especially softball, it's a team sport. And so I never felt neglected. I think it was just I always kept myself very busy. So it was never like I had resentment or felt like I was being neglected from my mom. I honestly look back and think from a young age, I believed that she was the strongest woman that I knew in my life because even looking back, like how we talked about earlier, where if you were to ask your daughter now, how she would feel about maybe doing things long term. If she would have asked me, like, I probably would have been like, I don't know, I can't handle this. And, being younger, you don't understand. But I looked at her from a young age as just being the strongest person I know because even when we did go through some tough times with Jordan, I, tried to step in and just be like, I want to make sure she's okay and she's protected because when you're younger, you don't always realize what this could be doing to your mom, like just for her mental health too. And
Hmm.
that's something like now as an adult, I understand a lot more where I didn't back then. And luckily, her and I didn't really discuss that much when I was younger, but now looking back, I know that she went through a lot of highs and lows just about herself and is she doing enough and being a great parent when we have those conversations now, I look back and I tell her, I'm like, I know you always felt like you might not have been doing the right things for us, but I always just looked at you as the strongest person in my life that it's only like that feeling is only just grown over the years as an adult because I've watched her take care of him from afar, and do have to do pretty much everything from a young age of, to now and forever. And so I think sometimes I know, and like I said, I was in sports, so it may be different if the other sibling isn't in sports and there is a lot of that free time. But I think I just took it as my mom is the strongest person I know for being able to raise Jordan and do the things even on the hard days that she was just always like I put her on a pedestal for my whole life, so
Aw.
I didn't need her to yeah, it's like I almost didn't need her to give me that attention or that affection at a young age because I knew she was doing the best that she could and her best was, probably a lot better than what it could have been, and even though with what she's doing now there are times when I'm like she had no help, she had no one to turn to. I wish I could have been more understanding from a young age, but I was so busy in other things that I never cared to learn until recently. And so that's where, looking back, I wish I could have been more of a support system for her back then. But I know that she also wanted to keep it together as much as she could for me, because
Hmm.
she didn't want me to think that she was struggling, or because she wanted me to just be happy and continue living my life. And she was really good at it. So I will hold her on that pedestal for forever. And
Oh,
all parents of someone with autism, like, it's not just her, it's thousands and millions of people out there that have to go through this. And I think, just being able to raise someone, or being a caregiver, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a parent. I think you just have a heart that not everyone will ever understand, and just being able to support them in any way. And like, my mom and I have conversations now where we are so much closer now too, because we can have these deep conversations that we couldn't have back when I was in high school and kind of doing things on my own, and I didn't really care about learning about it. And that's where sometimes I wish maybe she would have pried a little bit more and like tried to sit me down. But I think God's plan for me was to just mature as a young woman, like in my late college years, that it probably wouldn't have been as good as it was if she would have talked to me about that back then. So it's
I
it's
think it's
been
more
just
organic, and like I would prefer my daughter coming to me too. Like it's, I
right.
know you've said, and your words were, I wished I would have cared more. We don't want you to. Like, we want you to live your life and to do your thing and never, ever feel guilty about that. And I'm sure you don't, but I think just now that you proactively want to talk to your mom about these things means the world to her that you want to discuss it. But I don't think she would have wanted to talk to you about it when you were, living your best life, because you only go
Yeah,
through
I agree.
high school and sports and all of those things once. And
Right.
we would never want to rob you of any of those experiences and memories, worrying about your brother. We got it. It's like we
Right.
got it. But it's so nice to have like an adult conversation, an adult relationship with our kids later. I mean, that's the blessing out of the whole thing.
Well, and I
So
always say, I'm like, moms are the heroes of the world in general, but moms raising a kid with autism, they beat that, in my
no,
opinion, just because it's so much more.
it's a tough job, but I you've been so great, and I have appreciated talking to you so much. And it just, I hope, again, people listening, like, it just gives me more um just hope and purpose, and that I'm doing everything right. I mean, I feel like we again question everything with our parenting decisions, but just knowing how beautifully you've turned out, and you're so mature, and so many of the things that you've said are the things that I hope that my own daughter takes away from living in this house and her experiences with her brother. And I'm sure many of the siblings feel the same way growing up with their brother or sister. So I just appreciate you being candid and sharing all of that, because it makes parents like me feel good that we're hopefully doing things right. Because
Absolutely. And I think it's just important to remember, you may not always feel like you're doing the right thing, but just from what I've gathered, just talking with you, the more you can love and be there for both your kids, like, it will unfold. Because we didn't even get into, like, I was kind of a bad child as well. I was doing things when I was younger, and I was giving my mom so much crap as a high school teenager that it's like, I
really,
look back and I'm like, I put so much additional stress on that woman, like, considering she was raising Jordan as well. Like, it will all come together, and you just keep doing what you're doing, because even having me on and what you do, you are helping give more hope and kindness in the world for kids with autism and family members with autism. So I'm just really glad you gave me the opportunity to come share my story with you and your listeners.
oh, well, thank you. We may have to get more into your rebellious years, because my understanding is that usually our kids that are neurotypical try to be perfect in every way. I feel like that's the path my daughter went on, because she didn't want me to worry about her, because I have so much to worry about with her brother. But that's interesting that you
Yeah.
just kind of like did your own thing and
But I just
rebelled a
say,
little bit.
yeah, you're lucky, because would I mean, I got into some trouble, and I'm not crazy, not arrested or anything, but just stupid high school teenager trouble. And I'm like, Mom, I'm so sorry. Now we still joke about some of the things because I'm like, I'm so sorry that I was putting any additional stress on your already insanely stressful life. But it all worked out. I'm like, God has a plan for all of us.
Yes.
And some people's paths are different from others, but like I said, just your daughter, she will realize this one day, and whether it's when she's hopefully maybe a little younger than me, but for me, it took till probably this last year really to truly, get some of those adult relationships with Jordan and having those tough conversations with my mom about autism. So keep your hope and faith because she'll come there one
I
day.
will. I definitely will. And I'll just keep bugging her until she talks to me. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Maddie. You have been awesome. And your mom has so much to be proud of both of her kids. So I can see why she is.
Thank you, Lori.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much, Lori.